Yeah, so we have, this is our second to last class, and I wanted to touch on painting today, painting, the process of painting, some techniques of painting, and also color, because I feel like that is something that people are dealing with maybe more outside of class than in, but being that I teach acrylic painting and I have a lot to share about that, I thought that it would be helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, and that is one of the downsides on Zoom, is the tactility, in person. And I want to make sure to address this because it is super important. And that is something that's more obvious when you are meeting in class. We can all see and experience the look and feel of the art making process. Although what's made me happy though is that people are using the cell phone, and being able to take pictures in a way that I think and also embrace photography as a part and parcel of the studio practice as well, which really was never used to be part of it. And I really always felt like that was a piece we were missing. So, we've been bringing it in more, which is great. And also video and things like that. Again, all of these, more new tools, but they're only tools. They're tools just like, painting and drawing used to be primary tools. Hi, Connie.
Hi, Adrienne.
Hello, nice to see you. So we just got started, Connie, but I was just saying, that I wanted to touch base with our painting process today and get into that because, of course, it's so important. We miss it. We miss the tactility and the sensuality of paint on a digital tool like a computer, but we want to make sure that we touch base with that. So yeah, let's do this. Let's first look at what we've been doing, during the week, and then get into the painting and other things like that we talked about. So I'm going to share a screen, and don't worry if you haven't been able to upload, although we did say that how important it was for each other to see. but if you didn't get a chance, we'll be okay with that too. Let's see. Connie, we're going to start with you over here.
Well, this has been a wacky week for me, I have to say, but the best part of it was going to the zoo. I went to the Franklin Park Zoo. So that was my contribution this week. I have to say that I was fascinated by these statues. I mean, I can't figure them out. There was no, indication of where they were coming from or anything, but I just found that. But the highlight was Little Joe. Little Joe was in his glory that day. I don't know. He just really was. I really am fascinated, but I haven't had a chance because things have been so wacky. Things were wacky. I went back to Boston, and I won't go into all that. But at any rate, Little Joe is my going to be my inspiration. I think I have a lot of. I took a lot of photos of him in different poses.
Interesting. Well, tell us. Oh my God! So tell us what what this, and this was your art date, obviously, and that's great.
Yeah. Look at him.
Yeah,
He's fascinating. I mean, the shape. I love the shape. I want to do something with the shape. Look at that shape. I mean, isn't he wonderful?
He is wonderful.
Like, wow. And he looked irritated. He was like, he put his butt to us, a few times, and he just turned around and was like, get away. It's almost like all these people gawking at him. I can't blame him, and look at this. I know. Wow. I know, Tally. It was amazing. I recommend it. I think we should all go. It's just like really, really great. I mean, the zebras and the giraffes and the lions were sound asleep, as you can see. Yeah.
Well, Connie, that's so interesting. I mean, one thing that's so striking that, the bit that I've gotten to know about you is that you have this very strong sense of humor, and, it does go through all of your work and your sort of take on the world. And I really think that's something that you should embrace.
Yeah.
in your work and go for it, because it's like, what are the things that, we want to leverage our strengths in our work, or our natural proclivities, because that's what makes our work be very original, because it becomes, that's who you are. You're an original person and there's nobody like you. And so what are the things that make you you? What are the things that, are going to run through your work, whether you like it or not? And they do. So there's something, about you're seeing, Joe, like as a reflection of the human condition, or, you might, anyway.
Yeah, I'm really into Joe. I really want to do something with Joe. I haven't had, but I haven't really been able to do much. It's been kind of
Well, that's okay. This is, your visit was obviously very inspiring, and, can really be a jumping off point for you, later. So you did your work this week. You did your work. You had an art date and you were, finding something that was, and it's interesting how you came back to Boston and found this, despite the fact that you're now living in a different place and you have all this land around you and these very different kinds of things. But yeah,
I know it was really interesting. It was a highlight of everything. I heard music, I saw friends. There's just a lot of stuff going on, but I couldn't wait to get back. Actually, I was really anxious to get home because it was so the traffic and everything. I just wanted to get back to my little retreat.
I was at First Friday and I thought I saw you going up the stairs.
I was there.
I saw you, and I was like, that's Connie, but that can't be Connie. She doesn't.
I know.
Connie, so I would have chased you, but I was like, that can't be Connie.
I'm sorry I missed you. No, that would have made my whole, because I got I went to see my friend at Galatea, who I used to do paint with, and her work looked wonderful, and it was lovely, just to be back and greet everybody. But in general, it didn't blow me away. I don't know. Did you see anything that you really liked?
That's another conversation.
Oh, I know. We won't go there now.
I was there too.
That's right. Tally was there.
I was there too. Oh, wow.
Yeah, how funny.
Sorry we didn't see each other.
Yeah.
I ran into Adria, but I didn't run into you.
Yeah. Right.
I think I left a little early, maybe.
Okay. So let's see, Susan. Let's talk about what you've been up to here.
Well, I struggled mightily this week.
Okay.
I threw away more work than I've ever thrown away. Yesterday, I finally said, you've got to have something to put up. It's clumsy. I'm not pleased with it at all. But I learned something that's really important to me. One of my problems was moving away from mass media. And it would have been easier if I was skilled at representational drawing or painting or something like that, but I'm not. And so I think I need to start thinking in terms of this theme in a little more abstract kind of manner. Yeah. So that's my next step. The other thing is that I'm really tired of all my papers. I've had these papers for years and years and years, and I said, I'm not going to make any more. I have so many. Well, I'm tired of them, and they don't suit what I'm doing now. I've always worked fairly smallly, like 5x7, or not even 8x12. 8.5 by 11 was huge for me. But now I'm working much bigger since I started working on this theme. So I think that's the other thing, is that I have to make some new papers, purge what I have and just make some new papers, especially grounds, especially grounds that are bigger, and that if I need to cut them down, that's fine. So I almost didn't put this up because I find it very embarrassing. But I said, no, I've got to put something up because it illustrates my struggle.
No, that's right, because this is exactly the right thing, Susan. I'm so glad you did, because the struggle is part of the art practice. If you don't think it is, then you,
then you haven't been making art very long.
It is part and parcel of it, and get used to it. So we all struggle And I am asking you to show things that, you know, are not finished necessarily at all. And that is so that we can, you know, chat about it and talk about, you know, what
Well, I have these guys.
possibilities are.
I
So
have my little folks.
yes,
I have,
okay.
I made a couple of folks. So.
All right. Well, you could put those up too, but yeah, no, I'm glad that you did that. And it's true. And so, you know, in a lot of ways, I mean, this class is, you know, it wasn't labeled as a technical class. It was labeled more
Right.
about a process, you know, class. And so we haven't gone into depth with, you know, the sort of nitty gritty painting or collage kinds of things. But as you see, I'm kind of coming back around to it for today, you know, going to talk a lot more about painting and some technical advice that I can give you, kind of generalizing speaking. But yeah, you know, that and that's part of this process is, you know, kind of saying, I'm going to clear the decks. Yeah, maybe this way of working or this kind of thing, you know, doesn't serve me anymore. I've been kind of relying on things before and maybe starting afresh, which is great. You know, it's like there's no art police. Us. You know, really isn't.
You weren't deputized, huh?
No, I'm only someone who's been kind of maybe at this a lot longer to, you know, facilitate my, you know, and just kind of, I bring to this process what I, you know, my struggle too. You know, so we're all at different places, but, you know, some of us who have maybe been at it a little bit longer can say, yeah, that's part of the process. And, you know, these are some of the things you can do to kind of what we're looking for is the sense of a satisfying art making process practice that you can find for yourself. Satisfying, meaning it isn't frustrating and it isn't stopping you. And so, you know, what that looks like, it can take a while to get there and it can take a while to find that. But the crux of it is learning to get those voices that want to stop us, which are the judge, out of the picture. You know, this is why we do things that are quick. We do many instead of just one. We find sources that we can go to for inspiration. We take ourselves on art dates. These are all part of it. Yeah. So good. I'm glad you put it up, Susan. And, you know, yeah, it's all there. It's all, you know, meanwhile, you've been making some work. And making work is better than not making work, you know,
Right.
And thinking about your work, that's part of the process. That is part of the art practice. So yes, great. Let's see, who else has stuff up here? Oh, Tally had things up there. Yeah, Tally has, and we'll circle back around to Tammy. So yes, Tally and I had a lot of back and forth in between class where she was, and I don't see them anymore, but there was quite a lot of drawing that Tally did, but she, you know, it's representative here. But my back to my response to Tally was pay more attention, work larger, and make these drawings more sort of commit to them. Yeah. So Tally, what do you, so tell us what you did in response to what I said.
Okay, it was a really interesting project. I at first I thought, oh God, this would be horrible. And the first one, I don't think that's the first one. Anyway, Adria had said to me, take a cup and saucer. That's the first one.
I know.
You can tell how much I didn't like it. And she said, take a cup and saucer, some black paint, and use a brush, and 18 by 24 piece of paper. That's a lot of paper.
Wow.
And so, of course, I do what Adrian tells me to do, and I didn't like that one. But in the process of 5, I was so glad for the project because it came alive for me. That's the second one. And just the whole notion of using the paper, you know, beginning to go off the edges and stuff and not worrying so much about the perspective, it began to feel like really fun. And the last two,
Yes,
that's the
Tally.
very last one. Actually, that's interesting. I posted that vertically, but somehow it came out
Oh.
horizontal. Because when I turned the paper to vertical, then it was even more fun.
Yes.
But I just loosened up as I went along, which felt great. And yeah, the last one on the far right, I painted that one vertically,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Okay,
it
good.
looks much better vertically.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, that's fine.
No, actually, it's the one just before the left-hand
This one
side.
here. This
Yeah,
one here?
that was the
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
I kind
Yeah.
of liked that best. I thought I played with the use of the paper better.
You know,
And-
it's so interesting because what Tally sent me a photograph of the installation of her show. She's got you've got a wonderful little show going on. And,
Yeah.
you know, even though I couldn't see things very well at all, but
Yeah.
I could see your sense of design. You know, Tally, you have an intuitive sense of design that just seems to really, you know, you can see in your photographs, like you have that innate design sense that, you know, capitalize on your strengths.
Yeah.
But what I was finding in your drawings were that it was, you know, you don't commit to it because you can't see it. You can't see when you're drawing from a little photograph. You can't see anything. So
Good point. Yep.
that's an issue
Mhm.
because then I don't feel like you're really committing to the drawing. And
Yeah.
what I've seen you draw with your brush, you know, I feel that there is a commitment to, you know, like this one, we were all saying what a strong drawing that was.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because it's not just the drawing, it's, you know, the use of the brush as being an interesting mark making tool.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we cannot forget that we are not only we're not just looking at the content, we're looking at how the content is.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm seeing here, right?
Yeah.
'Cause
Yes,
I know,
thank you.
you know, I know that you are, you know, it's wonderful that you're having the back and forth with your granddaughter and she's sending you pictures and you're doing them, and it's fine to do that. But we're talking about the art making, which is kind of it can be a really different
Sure.
thing.
Sure.
And, you know, with the art making, we are looking at things like composition and line quality and, you know, working on the page. And, you know, these have a very funky, you're right. I mean, they're not proportional, but they're interesting drawing, and that accounts for a lot.
Yep. Yep.
Oh,
Yep. And I sort of looked at this at the end, or I haven't touched any of them, but I wondered what it would be like to add color to them, whether it would wreck it. You know?
hey, you wouldn't be wrecking it. You would be experimenting.
Yes.
And that's the only way you'll ever know. So you
Mhm.
can make 5, 10 more of these easily.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I would encourage you to do that because there's, you know, with this line that you've given us, this isn't a sketchy line. This isn't I'm not sure kind of line. This is like, you know, you're committing,
Right.
you know, in its wonderful way of like that contour line, you know, that we practice in class. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Does
thank you.
everybody-
Thank you. It opened up some new thinking. So
Yeah.
it was a great
yeah.
assignment for me.
Good, good. I mean, does everybody else understand what I'm talking about here? I mean, please let me know because I you know, this can be like, what the hell is she talking about?
No. I'm interested to know what you told Tally to do. I mean, I really like what came out of it.
Yeah,
I'm
so-
interested.
Well, I was saying, you know, that Tally, you know, had, you know, enjoys working from photography, but you know, these little, the drawings, you know, are, well, first of all, the line weight is the same, you know, pretty much throughout because of the kind of, she's using a felt tip pen or whatever. But because you can't see very well from these drawings, I mean, nobody could see well, like nobody.
Yeah.
If you really can only sort of, what I would say,
I'd help you, but I don't know the words either.
Yeah, I mean,
I always feel like it's one thing to take a photograph and then try to turn it into a drawing, because I feel like photographs are very like depictions of real life. And when
Mhm.
you're trying to turn it into something else, you're abstracting a little bit.
you are.
And like it's hard to figure out, because I do this a lot too. And I'm always trying to figure out, so how much of the original do I want to keep? How much of
Right.
it do I want to be, to look like a real thing, or how much do I want to enhance, like, and focus just on the colors or
Yeah.
on the shapes or on
Yeah.
whatever. So like, I have no idea what like the original photograph was that you're working from, but like, it's interesting to sort of see this. And I feel like it could almost be a game, right? Where it's like, all right, so what was the original photograph?
Yeah.
And not that you need to compare, but it's kind of like, let's turn it into something else, and let's turn it
Yeah.
into like just blocks of color or something,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
also feel too like there's not enough room for you to have there, the drawing was the photograph is so small that you can't really see this figure per se. I mean, it's actually kind of interestingly strange here because of
Yes.
the way it's
I
I
did
mean,
too.
there's actually something kind of interesting about that. But like here, I feel like you're just saying, well, it's sort of like this. There's not much specificity. And so for me to appreciate it as a drawing, I want a specificity, or I want a commitment to the line quality. So
Mhm.
me as a viewer, and that has to do with that thing we were talking about earlier in class, which is mark making is a sensual process. There's a sense of working with materials and appreciating them for the tactile
Mhm.
and sensual quality.
Yeah.
So there's a way in which I kind of wish for you to get more engaged with something you can really see. That's the problem that I have with that. That's
Yeah,
all.
I just wanted to add one thing that I thought of, Tally, when somebody recently asked me to do a portrait from a photograph, a
Mhm.
tiny little photograph that I didn't know the person. She had died. It was very sad. She died of leukemia, but at age something. But a friend had asked me, well, will you do a portrait? Because I used to do portraits. And I said, but I really don't think I could do it, because I need to know the person. I need to see the person,
Yeah.
I need to have a sensitivity to the subject, and not that you don't to your granddaughter, but
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. It's very
No,
hard.
it's a good point.
This is why, when, I've taught, beginning drawing, people have this great craving to do photographs often of their, their family, and they bring a little tiny photograph in, and I'm like,
what
but you
can you
can't
do with that?
see. You
Yeah.
can't see.
Well,
That's right. It's
So every time like something like that, I always want to just turn the photograph upside down, and just like focus on the shapes, or focus
right.
on like all these things that you wouldn't normally see when you're trying to turn it into a face, or you're trying to turn it into a thing. Like, I would rather just go completely abstract.
it's
Yeah,
very
but the
hard.
people want, they want a picture, they
Well,
don't want
that's the thing. And especially when somebody who's just died, it's like
Oh, yeah.
create this person on a piece of paper, and you're like, no, I can't.
I know. Oh,
So
I'm
that's,
glad
you really have to.
I think you did the right thing. frankly.
Yeah. So, but anyway, this is what I was trying to say. So I said to Tally, can you draw something from life? Because I really wanted her to, get back into observation from what's in front of you, because you can
Yeah.
see really well. And you still are abstracting. I mean, I know that this is not every little, nook and cranny, but but you are also capitalizing on the use of the big sheet of paper and getting your design there. Like,
Uh-huh.
a drawing is not just marks on a piece of paper. Like this one, for example, for me, I wish that it had been, consider the whole page. Like, you might go back into this, tear off this edge here, and maybe crop in a little bit more, so that, this drawing sits more on the page and
Uh-huh.
appreciates the negative space around all of it, not just
Yep.
the side of it. So, but but that's what I said to her. Go back, draw from life.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. You're welcome. So yeah, this is about nurturing your studio practice, and it's different from responding to your daughter, your granddaughter, and that can be
Sure.
part of what you do too. But if we're talking about something in the studio that's going to sustain you, I do
Yeah.
think go back to draw from life, and you will see that actually what you learn from drawing from life, you can carry over to those little drawings in the photograph and
Mhm.
actually make them more accurate because you'll
Mhm.
have had that experience from life.
Mhm.
All right, let's see, Tammy, we're gonna see you. Okay.
Hey.
Here.
So I feel like the week between or like it's Mother's Day. This is like the first week of May is always like the week where everything starts to bloom and pop,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So and also May 6th is the 14-month anniversary of when my mom passed away and the 160th anniversary of Henry David Thoreau. So
Wow.
last year and this year, I gather friends on the shores of Walden, and we kind of go to just sit and talk, and we talk about like our like not just historical figures, but also like the people who've passed away that we know, and we just use it as this beautiful somber time. So
Nice.
you can see that I gathered like lilacs and I had some forsythias in my
Yes.
hand, right? At the shores of Walden. And yeah, and it's just because just being by a beautiful body of water is just an incredible.
Mm.
Um,
Well, there you go. You engaged your friends and family or whoever to do this thing with you, Tammy. There you
yeah.
did it.
Well, exactly.
Go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah, and I feel like it's something that makes people pay attention more, because usually
Yes.
it's like, oh, let's just go to Walden to walk around for the historical whatever on a tour, or let's go to swim, or let's go skate on the ice. And this is just sort of a contemplative thing where it's not too cold, so you don't really, you don't want to sit. Like it was the perfect temperature. I sat with a friend and he was telling me like the whole circumstance behind when his father died like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It was really
Yeah.
beautiful and touching, um and also just the water itself was also like this beautiful mirror, and the trees
Yeah.
are like they're still mostly green and like and gray, but like the buds are just starting to come out, so there's like just a hint of red
Mm,
the shoreline. So
mhm.
I spent a lot of time also just by myself, just sort of walking along the shore and like looking up at the trees. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and this was something like in my neighborhood, like this is what Waltham is like, right? We're not quite conquered. We're kind of like we're about tree stumps and like rested things in the forest, which is like what I've been constantly battling against. But like that, I just thought it was an interesting composition.
Juxtaposition, right? I mean, the
Juxtaposition.
trees cut and you have refuse, and it's like, oh dear.
The opposite, right? It's like
Balance.
this is the kind of dead that spring is not going to awaken,
Oh.
And then that one, like I was like, oh, I want to take pictures of all like the beginnings of buds and the leaves coming out, and I'm like, look at this poison ivy on a rock. Even the poison ivy is cute.
The irony, the
Yeah.
irony.
Yeah. And then during the sunset, I'm also like captivated by the shadows on the wall.
Yeah, that's a very interesting photo for sure.
Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I have another one that's like green. It's like that long one on the left side.
Yeah. Oh, oops.
Yeah. Yeah. And sunset and like the purples of the
This one here.
no. Up, it's like it's a long, thin one, but that's capturing the shape of the clouds.
Here we go.
This one, yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
shadows on me and the shadows on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems to me that you are drawn to photography.
Yeah.
That's something that is feels natural for you to do. It feels expressive.
And it feels like I think I've been I don't know whether it's technology and like this is a good part of technology, but I feel like this is part of my practice or this is my research where I'm always taking pictures of things, of images that I want to frame or capture.
Yeah.
I come back to it later to sort of like when I paint something or when I sketch something, like this is what and I don't always base it on it, but I'm kind of like, all right, so what would it look like if I did like the stem and some shapes of leaves and it turns into something else or.
Mhm.
It's just, so I feel like, I like that in this class, you are looking at it like, Tammy, this is your practice.
This is
It's
your
like,
practice.
it's
Yeah.
not just the stuff that's like your sketchbook. This is your practice. So I picked
Exactly,
that up. Yeah.
exactly. I
Yeah.
guess I want to say, that is exactly right, that we broaden, our minds to say, the art practice doesn't have to be just painting and drawing. And, how wonderful that we can be open to, all kinds of things that, end up being satisfying to us to express ourselves. And sometimes painting and drawing doesn't cut it, they end up being frustrating.
Yeah.
And they end up, being too close to those negative voices that, tell us that we can't, or we shouldn't, or we aren't, whatever. So it just depends on, and that's why I say be open to anything. I have a student that started with me a bunch of years ago, do a painting, drawing, whatever. She's doing videos now. She found that making videos ended up being really interesting and exciting for her. And so, I've been meeting with her in these art chat groups that I know both Tammy and Connie have both been in, on and off, but they're just a separate meeting that all of you are invited to if you want to be doing that later. After this class is over, that's another way to stay in touch. But she's been doing these videos for almost 2 years now, completely changed her focus. So that's also part of what's acceptable. We tend to think, and it's kind of, painting and drawing might be something that you want to continue to do, but it doesn't have to be the only thing that you do as part of your art practice. Susan, what do you think about that? Do you feel like you'll always be drawn more to the tactile painting, drawing neck of the woods? How do you feel about that for yourself, Susan?
I don't really paint or draw. I do collage work.
Collage.
All
right, yeah.
I have never thought of myself as being skilled in painting or drawing. I've started doing more painting into collages.
Mhm.
And I, except for this recent little streak, I make my collages from painted papers. I can feel myself saying, yeah, maybe someday I'd like to do something more. I've always been interested in assemblage.
Yeah.
Because I make jewelry also.
Yeah.
If I was younger and had my druthers, I might have a jewelry studio.
Uh-huh.
Because I love making jewelry.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
in my third floor apartment, tiny little apartment, that's not practical. So
Yeah.
and I've started doing this. So yeah, I can see myself moving further into doing more painting, probably, rather than, I like combining. I did this whole period where I was doing these very basic collages and then
Yeah.
drawing vessels on top of them.
Mhm.
And I really enjoyed that a lot. So I can see myself evolving, and I
You're
have been
open.
involved over the past few years doing 2D art. So
Yeah. Well, the work that you've presented in the Padlet, at least, is my way that I've known you so far. It does feel like you are incorporating some painting into what you're doing.
right, which I can remember when I first heard, well, now that you've done that, why don't you paint into it? And I went, paint? I can't paint.
Oh, yeah.
So now I'm less afraid of that.
Yeah, great. Anything else people want to say about Connie? Did you?
I just want to say I like what you've been doing, Susan. Actually, I like those hands that you didn't like today. I thought that had a lot of potential. I mean, especially
Yeah.
with more collage and more paint, you could do multiple hands and in different
Mhm.
positions. I think it was like an outsider look. I was watching this thing on an outsider artist, this Wong. He was an amazing outsider artist. Apparently, made it. I mean, made it big, and then he committed suicide. It was very sad, but I mean,
Wow.
they're building a foundation for him, and His mother is, it's in a New Yorker thing. It was an audio thing I was listening to while my car was being repaired. But anyway, I like that. I really liked what you were doing, and I don't think you should be you need to quiet the inner judge. You know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think part of it is having what I have in my brain come out on the paper. And that was so far from what was in my brain. And I think that's where,
Yeah.
you know, that's where I was not as pleased as I could have been with it. So,
Right, right. Well, again, let's just remember this class, really was designed to help you, understand what's involved and what's the point of a studio practice, which is, this engagement with what are you curious about and what do you want to explore. And, that's kind of the essence, I think, of art making is I want to see what I make. I want to see what I make.
right.
But it is very hard and it is a lifelong journey to shut that judge up because we all, especially women, I'm going to say even now, here, we feel so judged and very hard to get rid of that. But I will say that, what's wonderful about an art practice is you can, if you grow to really believe this, it is true that you're in a space where nobody can judge you. It's one of the places where you can, let that id go free, just
Yeah.
and explore. And there is no such thing as the art police. There isn't. There is nobody to do that. It's up to you if, when and if you want to show your work to other people. But it is more about that curiosity that you're trying to slake, that thirst for understanding what you're about by virtue of trying different things out.
Well, this feels also like a very safe space to share things that didn't come out the way I wanted them to come out.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
I can't say that about every space. So,
Yeah, well, I want to encourage that. And, just because we are going to, be sort of ending this whole thing fairly soon, I just want to say that you have each other's email addresses and contacts. And I do hope that you can, continue to develop, art friends.
yeah.
And because that's such an important part. It's a community of art making together that is very, very important. I mean, I have developed in our community without which I would find very, very lonely and hard to do what I continue to do. It is, part of enriching one's life. I think that's another reason why we do this. We're drawn to it for some reason. We really are. And so it's community and communication. Right. And so it's not going to be just anybody. It's maybe not even going to be people that are normally in your life that you can find a community for this. I know for me, it's not everybody. I am married. I have a husband I can show this work to, but it's not satisfying because he's not really there with it. This is not how Elliot, I love him for other reasons, I have to be very careful. I will not just show my work to people, I want to know that people are understanding what I'm trying to do. So we do need to find our art friends. We need
And I think it's a little much to only have one art audience member, because if you did have a husband who was like loved everything that you did, then you might not share it with the world. You might be like, oh, that's enough. He likes what I do. That's it. Or your best friend or your sister or whatever. It's like, no, there's
and we also want to nurture our little green buds shoots, that are coming up, and we want somebody to look at our work and understand us. I think that's kind of what it is. It's like, there's this part of me, it's weird, like these things that I make, they're like, and, but I have this drive to put that out there, and to make it, to see it made. And I do feel that when we make our most individual work, that actually it becomes more universal. Like if we can find the right audience will find it and will understand it. We'll get what we're trying to say and we'll get what we're trying to do. It isn't going to be everybody though.
It's interesting.
Go ahead, Tally.
Okay, it's very interesting what you're saying, and I'm not sure this is completely related, but it's something that's very important to me right now. I've moved into one of these senior communities, and I am so grateful that I have making art in my life, because I'm constantly thinking about it, and it gives me something to be thinking about all the time and seeing and appreciating. And it just makes all the difference in the world to me right now to have that. So I'm not just resorting to reading books and reading what other people are thinking and so on. But, I have a second bedroom, which is a studio, and I've never really had a studio before. And that
Nice.
makes a huge difference to walk in and see that, whatever it is I'm working on, oh my God, where did that come from? So it's a real source of pleasure and enrichment to me. And sometimes I even find out what I'm really thinking by what I work on. So.
Well, precisely, Tally,
Yeah.
precisely, yes.
Yeah.
And,
I was good. So to build on that, I was going to say, like, you don't know what you're creating, but it's possible that whatever it is you're working on, and I've heard this from playwrights and people who write books and all sorts of things, like whatever you are needing to bring into the world is going to find a perfect viewer, audience member, and it's going to change their life or hit them in that certain moment. And it's possible that you're even creating stuff for your future self without even realizing it, right?
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
No, it is. I mean, art making of any sort, writing, music making, writing, play, whatever, theater, dance, all of the arts are really to enrich our lives. I mean, not everybody is going to make a living doing it or, be accoladed by the greater population. Most people are not, but, it humanizes us. It helps us
Good
know
point.
what we're thinking, it helps us think about things that are other than, the horrible crises in the world, or helps us process that. It is a gift to be able to, have the opportunity to scratch the surface, right? And we all have been thinking that, well, somebody else is going to tell me that I'm an artist, and then I'll know. No, I think, if you want to do art, then you are an artist.
Yeah.
But
That's hard to admit sometimes.
it is hard because, of course,
I can remember the first time I admitted that I was an artist was just a few years ago. And it's because somebody who was an artist was talking about this installation they had made, and they turned to me and they were explaining blah, blah, blah. And he turned to me and he says, well, you understand, Susan, because you're an artist too. And I said, yes, I guess yes, I am. It was really like, I can see it in front of my eyes. It was a really big moment. So
wow, yeah, but you still were relying on someone else who told you that. But maybe now you can sort of.
well, now I don't, right?
Now
But
you
that
don't.
was the one. That was the trigger.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it just, what does that mean? I mean, it means that you're committed in some part of your life to finding out what you have to say.
Mhm.
I want to
Right.
know what I have to say, and I'm going to just do this because I want to know. And then if you do it that way, then there is no good or bad. I guess what I'm trying to do when I look at my students' work, I'm trying to help them identify a way of working that is going to get them deeper. Like, for example, Tally, I think that there will be a greater reward for you if you start to draw things from life, because you can
Yes,
see better.
I really get that now. Yeah.
Yeah. And that there's nothing wrong with doing what you were doing before, but in the context of looking at a studio practice, which just means you're committing yourself, right?
Mhm, mhm.
I'm feeling that when you stop to really see and draw what you really see instead of what you think is there, it's
Mhm.
going to reward you in the long run.
Yeah, no, I
Right.
get that. I get it. Yeah. Mhm.
And in some ways, that early question, which I asked you about the second class, which was to kind of identify something you wanted to work on, was only to say that's a model. That's a model for a studio practice where you sort of set aside, all right, this is an idea or a theme that I could ride for a while. It may not work for you. It may be at this point where it's like an albatross around your neck, like, darn, it's too limiting. But that was
Well,
interesting to see.
Yeah, it's interesting because I also like to write,
Yeah.
and the process for this show that I have just here at Carlton Willard, I tried to write an art statement that people who didn't understand art would make some sense too. But the integration of the two, I think that I express myself more fully in writing, actually, at this point.
Uh-huh.
But I may get to the point where they feel more equal. It's kind of interesting because I have the time to think about it. I don't have a job right now.
Right.
Yeah. That's so, what a
And
great.
Callie, and I would love to see like just one of your works, right? Like in a tiny little frame, like really small, and then like a whole essay, right? Like a wall of
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. Well, maybe someday. I'd
Yeah.
love to be with you on your Walden thing. That sounds like such a great thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If,
I mean,
if anybody ever wants to go to Walden just to hang out, I always love any excuse to hang out there. So
see, I think that you, Tammy, if you wanted to, you could become the Walden, person,
paper.
the sort of
Yeah.
the person who coordinates a Walden appreciation or a Walden
Yeah.
homage, or anyway. But again, it's all about, it's like how public do you want it to be? Like some, it doesn't have to, your practice does not have to be a public practice. It could be a very private practice. It's really, that's what's so great about it. You can make it be what you want it to be. And, if you want to make it more public, there's so many ways now to get it out in public, including electronically, like blogs or like Instagram accounts or just emails to friends. There's a way that you can spread it, more broadly if you want to, or you can keep it very personal and keep it just for yourself. But the thing is, the tricks about how to sustain it, that's the thing. Like, I want to have a practice, but I work for a couple of days and then I run out of steam. I don't know what to do next. And that's kind of what I'm hoping that you'll have gotten out from this class, are some ways to accomplish it. So do you remember when we've been doing these really quick studies, these quick things where there's a prompt like, now make 10, or take a box and make, and respond to this prompt about it, at any rate, we've done a number of those in this class. Those are ways in which you can get started in the studio. You want it to flow. You don't want to be in there and just be frustrated and say, oh, I should be making art, but I don't know what to do next, and that's where a lot of us find ourselves. So that's what I'm hoping, that you will have gotten out of this class.
Definitely. I think we have. I mean, I think that just getting in here and like just seeing everything in my studio, I found all my acrylic paints. It was
good.
exciting. Avery, I'd forgotten I had them. Like, wow. It's been good. It's been really good.
That's good. That's great. So, speaking of, I just actually, you got me started thinking, Connie, that I did want to actually introduce you to some of these people that are what we call outsider artists. I'm sure that you know the term and you've seen some examples, but I have always found myself being so inspired by outsider artists, almost more than regular artists, if you want to use that word. But here's somebody to look at. Noah Purify, Purify Museum. Let me just bring him up here. He was an artist who did not go to art school, which is why we call them outsiders. And
Oh.
there is a museum of his work all outside, that it is right outside of what is it, Joshua Tree National Park, if you ever go there. And his work is all made of what people threw away, but he was doing this long before the current interest in recycling the things that we throw away. But this is I've gone to this place. I've gone to this his museum outside, and it is just remarkable. Like, he built these things out of trash, and I find them so.
Oh, they're all toilets, aren't they?
These are all toilets, but look at this.
Beautiful though.
Beautiful, right?
how
Those are
he
pictures.
created. And yeah, so I just go back to some of this other stuff that he's done. Where are we here? Yeah, let's go out of this again. But this guy who lived on this land, out in the middle of the desert, is creates these things that are very moving. So anyway, I will send you his name in
Yes,
later
do.
after we're done today. But somebody else that I find is so interesting is this woman, Julia Scott, whose work actually has inspired so many. Wait a minute, not Julia Scott. I'm sorry, not Julia Scott. Somebody else. Hold on. Julia. Wait, hold on a second. Julia. I was looking for her name here, and I see that I came up with the wrong one.
Is she an outsider?
Yes, Julia starts with an S.
Trying to think.
Hold on, I will find it.
I might add, there's the American Visionary Art Museum.
That's
in-
right. Yes,
Is it
yes.
right?
Julia Sissy?
No. Starts with an S. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. I should have had this all lined up, and I don't. But you know what? I look. I will. I'll be thinking about it while we talk. All right. I will get there.
Judith Scott.
Judith Scott.
Judith Scott. She wraps stuff. She was in an institution and she does these amazing
Thank you.
wrap things.
Judith
Oh,
Scott. That's what it is. Judith Scott. So I had the first name right, but not the last one. Judith
Yeah.
Scott. So she was this woman. Yes. So she was, maybe developmentally delayed. I'm not sure exactly what her deal was. She had a twin. She was, taking art at this institution where she lived, but she came up with this whole body of work. She was really committed to this, which has influenced so many artists working today. And, you may say, wow, why? But there was a commitment to her work too. Judith Scott, she committed herself to this work.
Yeah.
And they really are quite phenomenal. So, this is another source of people who are not schooled. Nobody ever told her she was or was not an artist. She just made these things. And you have to look at the sort of just perseveration, that's evidenced in this. And you gotta just be kind of astounded by the body of work that she created. Anyway, there's a website now, but many, many younger artists have looked to her for a lot of inspiration for the work that's being done now. Okay. So I wanted to talk about painting a little bit today and a little bit about color as well, right? Because I feel like that is an area that will come up no matter if you're doing collage or photography or whatever, but to know a little bit about color, I know, is really important, but I also wanted to talk a bit about acrylics, just so you would know, and in case you do work with them, or you will work with them, or you want to work with them, these are some things that I can talk to you a little bit about. So what I'm going to do is just turn my camera down on the desktop here and give you a little quickie tutorial about it. So many of you may know that I do work for Golden Acrylic Paint Company, showing people how to use their materials, right? So, and I'm actually doing a free lecture demo this Saturday at the gallery downstairs from the gallery where I'm exhibiting. So there's still a few spaces if you want to join in, but at any rate, I'm going to give you a little quick tutorial now. Has anybody here been to my lecture demos on Golden?
Yeah, I was going to recommend them because it's like, it's really amazing to be able to sit down with somebody who can play with these materials and say, this is the consistency of, of this one. And then this is what it actually looks like, because I feel like this is why things aren't as bright as I thought they were going to be, or like she has an answer to a question I haven't even asked yet about materials.
Well,
so,
that's
cool.
right. And, this ends up being such a critical part of when we start to use paint. Just knowing the basics about it can make all the difference. So I'm gonna just kind of run you through some things, and feel free to ask questions as I'm doing it too. But I want to just talk about, first of all, this thing about viscosity, because this is a question that a lot of people have. And when you go to buy acrylics now, there's not just one kind of tube you look for. It's like many. So let me try to decipher some of this for you. So this is a tube of acrylic paint that you may have been using. And for some of us are of a certain age, this was always the first kind of paint that was on offer at the store, and it's called heavy body paint because it's super thick. So you want to, let me actually pin myself here to the everybody can see pretty well here. It's nice and big on your computer screen. Yes. Okay, great. Okay, so
I'm going to put myself on speaker view. Then it'll be there. Voila.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
So as you can see, it is thick. It's heavy body because when acrylic paint companies started selling paint like this commercially, what were most people using? They were using oil paint, right? Yeah. And oil paint was thick. Hence, the first kind of paint on the market was thick acrylic paint. But the people that were experimenting with this, the artists of the day, like Helen Frankenthaler or Mark Rothko or Stuart. Let's see, there's just a whole range of artists who were playing with acrylics when this polymer emulsion, which is simply molecules of plastic floating around in water, were made available thanks to World War II, thanks to the petroleum industry, right? Suddenly we had the ability to paint super large staining canvases, doing things that normal oil paint could not do. Just couldn't be expensive working that way, just was impossible. But even Jackson Pollock wasn't using oil paint. He was using enamel house paint on those big paintings because he could never have afforded to use oil paint in the way that he was using it. It wasn't, feasible. So this, ability to work with large canvas on huge areas of color were just, certainly something that was new for the world after the war.
Mhm.
But at any rate, easel painters, such as we were called, would be looking for an acrylic that was more like oil. So hence we have heavy body paint. Long story to get to the fact that this may not be the best paint for you, because if you're looking to do things with acrylic that you cannot do with just, paint that's super thick like this, that's when, the advent of, just fairly recently, acrylic paint companies started to put out on the market paints that were much more movable with a brush. And so I want to show you what some of that looks like too. So, excuse me just for a second while I grab my acrylics here. All right, so then we have this paint here, which is called fluid acrylic. And it is called fluid because it's just much more sort of ready to be moved around with a brush. I just want to move my brushes quickly here. That was a brush for you to show you what I'm talking about. Yeah, sorry about that. So, the movability is way different from that. So the question is, why this and not that? This, if you want texture. This, if you want to, move your paint around and you want the brush strokes showing, which is not looking great here on my computer, but you can probably see that. There you go. See the brush marks, or the fact that you could, scratch into this. This is great paint for that kind of application, but not so much if what you really want to do is work kind of with a watercolor effect. You want to move the paint around, you want to have, the ability to have it be sort of staining the canvas or staining a piece of paper. You want it to look like watercolor, then, there's this. So I think, just knowing that there are actually more even viscosities, which I can talk about in a second, but there's not this may, and when I've taught acrylic paint for a long time, and I was teaching it way before I ever started working for Golden and understanding about all this different stuff and mediums, which I'm going to tell you about in a second. I would notice my students, being really frustrated because the way they wanted to paint was not, something that this kind of thick paint allowed them to do. And so you end up with brushy strokes that, are not particularly beautiful strokes. Like, they weren't able to do that, or they didn't know how to do that. So this is, what I wanted to show you today. So let me actually quickly grab some water because I need that to do a little bit. Sorry, I didn't prepare myself for this thoroughly. Hold on.
This is a good demo, I
But
think.
the good thing about acrylic is that it is water soluble before it dries.
Yes.
So of course, you can clean up it, and you can do things with that water, that are really remarkable. And you can have your acrylic paint, really look like watercolor, or paint with it super thinly like that. Water is a medium. In other words, mediums are things that just change your paint or make them appear different. So water is one, but you can also use acrylic paint mediums to change the paint. But so that's, some of the things that we run into with acrylics that can really, get in an artist's way. And, the thing about knowing the difference here can make all the difference to your satisfaction in the studio. So, you know, I had talked a little bit about, you know, having you bring in a piece of cardboard. Well, you know, I think maybe this will just be today, you know, this demo time, because it may really help you, you know,
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
great. This is
But-
totally
I
great.
think so too.
yeah, but just to say that, you know, our brushes, we, you know, we just take them for granted, and we just think, oh, well, they're just to deliver paint to the surface, and it doesn't matter what the brush stroke is. But I want to say that it really does matter. Your brush strokes matter a lot, especially when you use paint like this, and so does the paper. So, you know, for our purposes here, I'm just actually using printer paper. It was just something I grabbed really quickly, you know, to be able to show you in this demo. But the paper, the surface that you paint on, has a great deal to do with how the paint looks in your painting. So this paper that I'm using here is super thin, and it does not absorb. And so the paint has a quality, you know, that I may not really love. When I use paint, when I use a piece of paper that has more body, that has more absorbency, I'm just looking to see if I have anything up here. I'm gonna have to grab some a little bit later, but that's okay. You will see a big difference in the way that you use, you know, your paint. So, and I want to say that this is a stubby brush, but even this stubby brush, and we did do an exercise early on in this class where we're using our paint brushes. It's an expressive use of a paintbrush is really important. So how we put our paint down and the care in which we use to paint, you know, can make all the difference as well. So this is something that I want to really put out there for you. It's like a brush mark has an expressivity. And sometimes that's super important for what we're trying to do, but sometimes it isn't. When we want to just make a flat overall color, that's also possible. So let me show you something that you might want to know that can help you do that kind of painting. Like this is, you know, these are just different possibilities out there. So suppose I wanted to cover a whole piece of paper with a certain color. One thing you just noticed in that painting was that my paints are pretty transparent, and you will find this many, well, I can only speak for Golden, but if you know, it tends to be that most good quality paints do not have white in them. They're going to give you the paint all by itself. So let me just put some more of this paint out on a little, I'm just using this as my palette. By the way, I like to use these for palettes. I don't often use palette paper. I personally mix a lot of color up at once, but by adding a little bit of white to my paint, I'm going to make a paint that is going to be more opaque. In other words, it doesn't necessarily have to be lighter, but it will make a paint color that will cover what's underneath. And it will also make a paint where you don't see a lot of brush stroke. And I get this a lot from people. Oh, you know, I just see too much paintbrush stroke. It's annoying to me. I don't want to see paintbrush marks. How do I make a flat color? This is how you make a flat color, by adding a little bit of white. It's such an important thing to know how to do. So when I make this color, and I also just add a little bit of water to this, just a little bit, so that it can flow a little bit better. I know I just added a little bit of green tulip. That's okay. I know you're going to be okay with that. But I've made this, you know, this color. So, you know, and this is if I don't want paintbrush strokes. And I just want to have a flat, expansive color without getting those annoying brush marks in there where it's starting to, you know, like I don't want that. Then this is how you do it. So viscosity can really, you know, affect your painting. understanding about adding just a little bit of white. It's the only way that you're going to make opacity. I know that sounds strange that you can add white and also not get it to be too light, but you can, and of course, the more white you add, the lighter your color will be. That's true. But you also can add just a little bit of white to any of your colors that are pretty transparent. Like, and it also doesn't, what we're looking at here in terms of transparency doesn't have to do with viscosity. Right? Because look here, do you see how the black marks show through the little swatch of paint here? They show a lot on this one. This paint is the thinner version. It's the fluid paint, but it's also the pigment itself is very transparent. So both of these really are showing you the pigment, not necessarily the viscosity, right? So viscosity, i.e. thickness, does not have to do with how transparent a color is.
Got it. So the white makes it more opaque.
More opaque, right? Exactly.
That's very cool.
Exactly. So it doesn't matter if you're using a thicker paint or a thinner paint, you still are going to add a little tiny bit of white to either color to make a paint color more opaque. So again, to show you this, illustrate this a little bit more. Once again, this is a color called green gold. It is a color, when I paint with it, even if I were to use the heavy body version, it's going to be annoyingly transparent. I mean, you might want that, and that's great if you're trying to do something where the color is going to show through. Let's just see here. Here we go. Here's a piece of, so I'm going to paint on that. And there's no way that this color, full-fledged right out of the tube or the bottle, is going to cover, this color. It's just not, because it is just transparent. So what if I love this color, but I want it to cover? I'm going to add a little bit of white to it. Let's get another little, so. Add a little bit of white to it. Okay, and now back to this. And now we cover.
Look at that.
So you see, it's still the same pretty basic color, even the same value. We've just made it opaque. So that is a super important lesson that a lot of people don't know. They get frustrated, and this sort of gets to stand in your way.
Is that a common critique of acrylic paint, that you can't cover? You can't
no,
make the opaque piece.
Well, because you can. You just have to know how to do it.
Oh, right, but if people don't know that.
People don't know. And I'm sure that gets in the way. But it also is true with pigments in oil painting. Same thing.
Oh, it is.
With the oil paint. Yeah. And so artists, if you're using a pigment that is not naturally opaque, which nowadays is most of the pigments, because most of the pigments are made in the chemistry lab. Most of them are synthetic, right? Synthetics tend to be more transparent. The old-fashioned colors like cadmium or chromium or burnt sienna or ochre, those are more opaque because under a microscope, they're literally pieces of rock. This is really interesting in terms of what's new about all paints. And this is true for oils as well. We have so many more synthetic paint colors. Synthetic paint colors are pretty much always more transparent, and you have to work to make them behave opaquely. So yeah, and so people who don't understand this get into trouble with the muddy color, quote unquote muddy color. They are not able to control their color because they don't understand this. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just that they don't come with instructions. And plus, if you learned how to paint when there were pigments that were mostly earth pigments, like the cadmium. Cadmium is a heavy metal, and it's not great to ingest or get into your body. But it's still out there, and people can buy it. But it was one of the opaque colors. That's why artists love it. It's natural. It's a yellow or a red that's naturally opaque, that'll naturally cover. And yes, you can mix those colors with other colors that are not to make colors, but you're always going to rely on adding cadmium. So titanium white is a pigment that is an opaque pigment naturally. So the idea is adding a little bit of that opaque color to your other colors will make all the difference. Let me talk a little bit now about color mixing, because I think that's also something that gets into people's ways. What I always do when I'm teaching is I recommend a palette that includes magenta, because magenta, this color, is key to making a really vibrant violet. And when I just show this because it's a nice little
Upside down.
oh, sorry. Well, wait, let me put it on the table here. This is from a color class that I taught this summer, but I just think that it illustrates so well this mixing of clean color. And also, this is an example of using your color wheel, what you know about color wheels, to create beautiful colors in between. So we tend to just kind of rely on, red, blue, and yellow as the primary colors from which you can make other colors, and it's true. But this is such a key thing that I want to show you how to, how you might work with this. So let me talk a little bit about using magenta to make violet. All right, so you might know from kindergarten that when you mix red and this is what I learned color mixing, I will never forget, red and blue make purple. Well, sort of. So let's see if that's true. Okay, so here we have red, we have pyrrole red, just red, it's like a red, your sort of standard variety red. So let's take red. All right. And let's mix it with blue. Let's take ultramarine blue, and we'll mix this together. And so we're going to mix these kind of in equal parts. Well, we can't see this color. Here is a trick. Let's add a little bit of white to it. Now, this is a trick I learned from oil painting class. You can't see this color because it's so dark, it almost looks black. But let's just add a teeny bit of white to opaque it, but also to see it. So let's just take a little bit and mix this. Can we see it yet? Can't really see it yet. Okay, there we go. All right. So yes, that's violet, but I would say that it's more of a brown violet than it is a vibrant violet, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's the color mixed with red. Let's see what happens when we use magenta. Okay, so let me just grab the towel. So magenta is a new color. You couldn't get it 35 years ago. I don't know how precisely how long it's been out, but it is a godsend. This is called quinacridone magenta, which tells you that it is a synthetic color, because if you can't pronounce the name, it is it is a synthetic. It is made in the chemistry lab. Quinacridone is a, you know, what would you say? Gosh, I'm not even sure which, you know, it's a pigment that is, you know, chemically manufactured, but it has spurred some really beautiful colors now that are now out in the market. So you can see how different it is from this one. So here's our pyrrole red, right? And there's our magenta. It's definitely got more of a blue cast to it, right? Okay, so let's make a beautiful purple violet out, and I'll take, and you know, there are two blues. We have both phthalo, cyanine blue, and we have ultramarine blue. Ultramarine blue is a more cool blue. They would call it a cooler blue. It is more of a red blue to begin with than phthalo, which is more of a green blue. But we'll just take this ultramarine blue and we'll mix it in here to make a more, what I call is a more vibrant violet. So I know this is really, really hard to see, but again, we'll add a little bit of white to it because you can't really see that until we add it. There you go. So it really reads more like, you see the difference. This is not, I mean, it's not bad. It's just different. And, you know, this is the difference between, you know, understanding that the magenta will give you a more vibrant purple, a more vibrant color of like violet than this mixing red in. But this is, you know, and violet, and rather the magenta is also a color with which you can mix your yellows to give you oranges, to give you, you know, a range of colors in between. So for my money, if I had to buy, could only buy one red, I would buy magenta, because there's more you can do with magenta than you can with that red. You can make this vibrant red from magenta by adding yellow to it. So let's do that. That's why when I assign a color palette, I always say 2 reds, 2 blues, and 2 yellows. So one of the reds is always magenta. Always, always, always. So I'm going to mix this little bit of yellow with this and just show you. We're going to get a nice red to it. So that's not really red yet, but that's more orange. But you would have to play with it. That is also a yellow that is called benzimidazolone medium, which means it is a yellow that is more to the orange than, for example, Hansa yellow, which is the standard yellow, which has been around for a long, long time. And it's more of a lemon yellow. So, you know, which yellow you use is also very important to the color that you're trying to make. My Hansa yellow here, see if I have one. Oh yeah, I do. So look at the difference between these two colors. I don't know. Is that, you're like, what? I don't see a difference. Okay, I'll show you. There really is a difference. Okay, so here's benzimidazolone medium. You see how it kind of looks egg yolky? Looks egg yolky to me. And here is Hansa yellow. It's actually not Hansa yellow, but it's bismuth vanadate yellow. Another, of course, they're constantly making new pigments because they are constantly replacing pigments that were not quite as light fast with ones that are better and better. All right, now you can really see the difference.
Yeah.
So, right, so if you want a real grassy green, which yellow are you going to use?
Hmm.
The benzo, probably, right?
No, well, I mean,
No,
it depends on what you're saying, grassy. When I say grassy, like a Kelly green will be this one.
Yeah.
This one is tending more toward the red.
You have to define grassy. I'm always thinking of
know,
grass,
I
like
know, and
dark
that's why
green and,
These
you know,
colors are,
shadows.
exactly, the colors, color names are not exactly scientific, not at all. But let's just say, let's take a little bit of this. Actually, let's take phthalo blue. Just get my phthalo blue out to show you the difference here. Pretty sure I have some up here. Here we go. Well, I was hoping that I'd be able to get my hands immediately on this phthalo, but what I do have is phthalo green, and it will give you the idea. Oh, here it is. Yeah, here's phthalo green blue shade. But so it's really the color that is more turquoisey. So see what happens when we add,
Mm.
The color that would be really similar to phthalo blue. Look at that green. So that's like a Kelly green, right? That's what I think of as more of a Kelly green or a grassy green. But that's of course different. And look what happens when we mix that same color with this yellow here.
Wow.
Well, it's different. I mean, actually, that's also a really good grassy green. What I was going to go for with the ultramarine blue, which is a color that's more red, like I was saying before, if you mix that with these different colors, you're going to also get, let's just bring this one back up here. It makes a big difference. So here's, again, this is the warm yellow. The yellow that's on the color wheel is going to be more toward red than our, more lemony yellow, right? And we take our ultramarine blue and mix it with these different colors. All right, here's the lemon yellow. But you see that it's because there's a little because the ultramarine is a color that goes toward red, you get a more sort of
Great.
It's a grade down.
well, no. It's the light in here. There.
Still looks great.
Does it look great? Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's
Great
not a
green.
vibrant green. Let's see what happens when we mix that with our other yellow here. And you're going to also see that difference. But they're not the same colors. They're really quite different. It's because of the ultramarine, leaning toward red. So that's that one. And look at this. Compare those two greens to these two greens. See how
And that
different
was
they are?
the yellow you were using in the one you're showing now with your hands. Was that bismuth? The yellow?
This bright, yeah, this is bismuth vanadate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, and a similar one is Hansa. That's the more easily found one, Hansa yellow. It's been around a long time, and it is typically the one that's more lemony yellow.
Yep.
This is like egg yolky. This one is more lemony yellow in it. But just to say that makes a big difference. And, some of this is when you start to understand about complementary colors, this does look more neutral because there's red in that color. So it is kind of canceling out that blue, and it's going to give you, a different kind of green.
Wow.
So questions, I mean, yeah,
Well, it's good to see that what a difference you get when you mix the different yellows with the different blues, and you get a very interesting variation. You don't have to stick with one or the other. You kind of I never think about mixing so much, I guess.
Yeah.
well, it's,
Good.
yeah, and that's why it's so important to start with paints that will allow you, you want to have a set of paints that are going to give you all these possibilities.
Yeah.
If you don't, you are going to be stuck. So knowing a little bit about color goes a long, long way. And knowing about opacity and transparency also is super important. And I know those of you who have taken the Jelly Plate print class, we go into that a lot. That's a big part of printmaking with these paints. The open acrylics that these are part of. These are the slower drying paints. I can talk about that as well. Is that we don't mix them with white. We just print them, but you can print one color on top of the next, on top of the next, and all those colors come through because they're not opaque. You can see one right through the other, and that's kind of the beauty of this.
I
Yeah,
have a question. The Seigneur, how you ever say it right?
Sennelier.
Sennelier. Now, are those the same kind of quality, would you say, as the golden? Because we've got a bunch of those. Remember, or I did. I thought you had told us to get these. The kind that have the like this. They're in a little pouch.
The open, no, the open acrylics is what you want for that. Yeah, because these stay wet 5 times longer than regular acrylic paint. And so it enables you to take the time to make prints with these. So the open acrylics you may not know about, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about these. So they stay wet so that when you are blending colors, you can really do that nice and thinly. So for example, and you can also mix these colors all together. So here's open acrylic, and you can blend and blend and blend these colors for quite a while before they start to dry up. And that is something that a lot of people want, because especially if you're doing paintings where you're trying to create like a sort of shading. You can mix these with your regular acrylics, but they'll still stay wet, but not quite as long as if you were using pure all open acrylic. But they do allow you, to create this blending that typically is hard to do because acrylics can dry so quickly. So it has to do not only with the viscosity of the paint, but also the stuff that's in these open paints. They're called open because it means there's a longer working time for the paint. In other words, it doesn't dry so quickly. So if you don't add water to your paint, that also extends the drying time. If you use open acrylics, that extends the drying time quite a bit. So for example, if I'm just using regular acrylics from the tube, that are not open, this will stay wet. Say it stays wet 5 minutes. If I'm using the open acrylics, the same amount, the same conditions and everything, then it'll stay wet 25 minutes. So it's not forever. It's not like oil paint, but it's certainly enough time to go back in there, mix your color and get back into it. So that is a good thing to know. These are newer. They've been out, I'm going to say 15 years, but a lot of people don't know about them. But they really are a boon to people who get really frustrated because the paint dries so quickly. So the other thing you know about is you can buy an open acrylic medium, and you can just add that. This is the open acrylic medium.
That's it.
You can mix this with any of your paints and suddenly have paint that will stay wet longer. You don't have to buy these. This is for people who are only, really only going to paint this way. Or maybe you're doing printmaking and it makes it much easier when it's already in there. But if you have a set of acrylics, but you also want to be able to have a longer working time, open acrylic is what you want. If you add water, you're going to just dilute your paint. I mean, it will, it will obviously keep it wet a little bit longer, but it won't give you the same strength of paint. This is a medium, and a medium, is just an extending your paint, making more paint.
With using the open, I mean, I hear people say, people who are oil painters say, nah, I don't want to touch that acrylic. And they'll either say it dries too fast or it doesn't have the same texture.
Yeah.
And probably a lot of other things too, but it seems like Golden has really worked hard to be able to have an argument for that.
Yes. Well, it's been the holy grail of the water-based paint industry, to try to make a paint that oil painters feel comfortable using. And it's true. So I'll tell you this, my experience is, yes, adding a little bit of the open medium to your regular acrylics or buying open paint, and also adding something like coarse molding paste, or a different kind of medium that has texture in it will give you that viscosity, because it's true. These open paints are still a little slippery, if you want to use that word. If you know what oil paint feels like, it's a little stiff. So I'm just looking for a medium to show you how you might do that. Let me just stay here.
I was looking at a bunch of sergeants at the MFA.
Yes.
I didn't realize how much he uses texture.
Well, that's really interesting. Sargent paints are very, yes, they're textural, and he relies on the brush stroke a lot, like they're luscious. And so he's definitely adding medium to his oil paints to make them behave that way. Yeah, absolutely. And other people, though, like Monet, had a very stiff paint because there were really choppy brush strokes, and also Van Gogh. At any rate, I'm not able to find, let me just look one more time here for my thicker, well, here, I'll show you that. I'll just do something different. I've got something called fiber paste here, which is another medium. There's all these different mediums that are out there, not only Golden. This is true in all the different paint, because they're all competitive with each other. They're all making basically the same stuff. I don't want to, I do love Golden, and I'm not trying to sell you on it, but I'm just saying that I know Golden more than the other ones. So I have been given all this great stuff. All right, here's coarse molding paste. This is exactly what I was looking for. So let me just show you. If you take a little bit of this stuff, which, as you can see, is it's thick. It's got a little bit of texture to it. This is I wish we were in person so you could really see the difference here. But if I mix some of this and some of my open paint, my open medium, and then mix my paint into it, I will have a consistency that's more like oil paint. This is still a little too buttery, but yeah, you can add things to your paint that will come pretty darn close to that feel, the look and feel of oil paint, Tally. But then you're not, some people are just never going to change because that's what they know how to paint with, and they have it down and they understand it. That's fine. People say they don't want to use oil paint anymore because of the
toxicity.
The toxicity is not in the paint. The toxicity is in the solvent that you might use to clean up your brushes.
Oh,
but
right.
you don't even need to use that anymore. People have discovered you can use corn oil to clean your brushes. See, it's not the paint itself that has toxicity. Some of the pigments might be toxic, like cadmium, like chromium, like manganese, like cobalt, all those things you don't want to ingest. But the same thing is true in acrylics, so it's the pigment that you don't want to get in your body, but it's used to be the solvents that were really bad. So you can just use corn oil or
I never heard
yeah, Murphy's oil soap to clean your brushes. So you
Hey,
don't
Adrian,
really need to get
thank
into that.
you. I thank you because it's a refresher. You had given us these directions before, but I haven't used. Now I know. Now I can use them.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you have to use the stuff. Anybody does. It's like learning a new computer program and then you don't use it for 5 months and you go back and you're like, what am I
What
supposed to
the
do?
hell?
It's like
Yeah.
everything. That's the more you use it, the more you get used to it. But now you'll have this on tape that you can always go back to
Oh, right.
view if
We have
you
this
need
on
to.
tape.
But these are just some little, tips of the trade, tricks that can make the painting experience work for you. And Susan, you're saying you wanted to make some more background. This is, if you use paint, this is certainly something that can help you with that, just to know kind of, what to do with it. But the use of white, understanding a little bit about the color wheel, all of these things, can really make things just so much more, easy for you. And I'll send everybody this too. One of the things, people kind of groan when you say, you should do a color wheel, but it can really be helpful because you do learn a lot. One thing that's really interesting is the use of adding black to some of your paints to increase the different colors that you make. Black is one of these colors that really can be so great, not just for painting just like black areas, but to mix into your colors to make just incredible varieties. So here's some black. Let's see what happens when we put a little bit of yellow out here and we mix our color with black. Just a little bit of black will go a long way, by the way. But if you mix black with yellow, you can make a kind of, a beautiful color. It looks green to me. I mean, who knew? So, and it also has kind of an opacity. That's interesting. I wonder. I think it might be the black that's giving the opacity to this. So there you go. And adding black to your red is also a beautiful color mixture. Let me just show you what that is like too. So we take this, bright, like typical, this is Pyrrole red. This is the color that I like to advise people to get if you're looking for a red rather than cadmium. First of all, cadmiums are really expensive. They're amazingly expensive, double the price at least, because the pigment is expensive. But you add a little bit of black to this color and you get a gorgeous brick red. So that's, another thing. Color is fabulous. And, just knowing a little bit of how to use color can make all the difference, to helping you get what you're looking for in your painting. Look at those two colors together. And then, there are these three colors are just stunning together. But, I add a lot of white to my paints. I'm adding white constantly for the opacity, but also to get a nice range of other colors that I might, be missing. Like you get, your primaries out there and then you only use your primaries. You're pretty darn limited. So just adding white to get some of these ranges in between can be a huge, change to your painting practice. And again, instead of always relying on, water to dilute the color and let the color of the paper come through. That's essentially what you're doing when you add water to your paint. I mean, it's fine, but then you're always relying on the white of your paper to give you a lighter color. You can really, limit yourself really more than anything else.
Andrea, have
Yes.
you, this is a naughty question. at Michael's, which is where I get a lot of my
Yeah.
art supplies.
Sure.
There's a golden equivalent called Craft Smart. Have you tried any of them? You can get all the
No.
same. You can get
But-
all the same colors. And,
Well,
and they're
well-
half the price, of course.
well, that's great. I mean, it's fine, Tally. I don't, what I would say is, you're paying for pigment. And it's very possible that Michael's, though, is getting pretty good pigment for the money because they're so big,
Yeah.
Which is why,
Yeah.
like anything else, like Costco or whatever, you do get some quality stuff that's cheaper because they're buying so much of it. But
Sure.
generally speaking, if you get a $1 container of acrylic, like $1 a tube, it doesn't have much pigment in it. It's mostly medium.
Okay, that's interesting.
And so
Because I
one-
haven't really experimented. They also use different words for the colors. They're much
Yeah.
more like red, yellow.
yeah, it's, I think.
So I have both, but I just was curious.
Yeah, no, that's honestly the truth is Golden is expensive because they really use quality pigments that are very light fast.
Right.
And it could be that you can't afford it, you don't want to, invest in it. That I totally get that. When I was an art student, I didn't either. I now understand that also your paintings can look a lot better if you do use better materials. You don't need to use the cream of the crop, but it can make a difference. But what you are also paying for is the light fastness, and then further, you can extend any of these colors with medium and still get pretty much the exact same paint. So you're basically, if you understand how to use mediums, which is just basically a medium is the building block of acrylic paint. It's what is in paint. You just add more medium to it, gloss medium, matte medium. You're just making more paint, and up to about 50% more paint. So if you know that, like, that's what I say to people who don't understand about using mediums, because it's like just one more thing. The best thing about using mediums is it'll save you money. And that would be the main reason why you might want to use them. Yeah. What
That's
other
a
questions do you
Great
have?
demo.
Yeah.
Do you think you can mix and match different? You've in the past have said you can, if you have other acrylic, like I said, the Sennelier.
Absolutely. You can mix any acrylic paint with any other brand because they're all the same, essentially the same thing. They're all this emulsion mixed with, polymer
Right.
molecules in water.
The golden medium with that, and just see. I mean,
Medium, everything,
yeah.
even latex paint from the paint store, you can mix.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like I'll use white paint from the paint store to mix my paints instead of titanium white acrylic, because first of all, it's more opaque, and second of all, it's a whole lot cheaper.
Right.
So I do that all the time.
Yeah, I know. It might be the way to go. I have so much oil paint and caustic materials, though. I just don't know what to do with it all.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you can give it away to an art school, or a student who would be very happy to have it, or an art center.
Yeah, well, I might
Or still use it.
delve into it. Yeah, but
Yeah, you can still use it.
So
Mhm.
much stuff.
And of course, you can use oil painting on top of acrylic. You could start your painting in acrylic
true.
and then go back, to get the big shapes in. And then because oil is a little bit less expansive, you could use your oils in it. So there's all kinds of ways of mixing and matching.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that sounds good.
I have like 3 versions of fluid acrylics. This thing here, which is a big, huge tank, that says extends fluid acrylics. Then I have another one called matte medium.
Yeah.
Then I have that one also says matte medium. So, but they all prove this more or less the same thing, right? Except the fluid one is probably give you more of a watercolor feel to it.
This is where we get into paint companies being paint companies.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I know this for sure with Golden, there are there are products that you can use kind of universally, but there are also products that are very specific.
Yeah.
So I know we're splitting hairs, but basically, Tally, a pourable fluid medium, whether it's glossy or matte, will extend your paints, but it'll change the viscosity of a heavy body to become more fluid,
Loose.
which is
Yeah.
looser. Yeah. So instead of using water, which dries your paint more quickly and extends it, but also kind of, does different things with it. I mean, it's stuff that you just figure out as you've been painting longer.
Right.
You may not want to use water. You may really see that the advantage of using acrylic medium, but a lot of them do the same thing. Yes. Yes.
I have like 4 different kinds.
I know. Well, you probably never need to buy any more. Just use what you have.
I think so.
Yeah. So,
That was a great demo.
oh,
Yeah.
good. I feel like, this is so essential and people forget. And a lot of painting classes, they don't teach this basic stuff because there's no time. We're so busy trying to, work on the painting process. A lot of times it's painting the still life or painting whatever. There's so much with that there's no time to talk about this other stuff with painting, but it is also important.
I wish that you could teach a class or a workshop on like use what you have. And
Yes.
just be like, get out all your old paint or like
Great.
figure out what works, what doesn't work, how you can like reconstitute stuff that's stuff that you should absolutely throw out,
I love that. I love it,
Yeah.
Tammy. I'll think about that one. Yeah, I love it. That's great. Maybe I'll start my own YouTube channel because some of this, it's like, honestly, it's not almost worth it to do it as a workshop, but it would be, an interesting one to have out there,
because I feel like I have points in my life where I have enough money to buy like decent acrylics, right?
Yeah.
And then I discover them years later and I'm like, can I add water to this? Can I add medium to this? Like, is this still, should I keep it around? Because someday I'll figure out what the chemical, like someday Adrian's going to post the magic, solution or whatever.
I will tell you that once your acrylics have dried, what's happening is the water has evaporated. And that won't happen for a really, really long time. Like I've been working for Golden for now 11 years and the stuff that I got early on, I still have and it's fine. It's really fine as long as the cover is on it and you do a good job of closing it up. You will have your paints for a long, long time. But even with the plastic containers, the water eventually does evaporate through the plastic. It will. So there's nothing you can do but just throw it out. And if your paint gets sticky, it just means the water is evaporating. You can try to reconstitute it by adding medium to it. If it's still sticky, you can, but it's on its way out. It's still, use it. As long as you can use it, I would say use it. But if you're trying to reconstitute a dried container of acrylic, no, not going to happen.
Yeah, I have one right here.
What about the long lasting nature of acrylics? Like they're still pretty young products, so we don't see many acrylic painting in museums that are collecting Da Vinci's and so on.
Well, you do see that, but you're right. People understand how to restore oil paintings because they've been around for 500 years.
Right.
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 And it
Exactly.
is new. And it's very interesting working with Golden because Golden is dedicated not just to making paints, but also to helping conservators understand how to restore them or keep
Good.
them vital. And
Good.
it is new, you're right. But they have a lot of people doing serious research on it. Like they're chemists who work for all of the paint companies. They really,
Yeah.
it's to their advantage to, making sure that they put out a product there that people will be able to, have for the eons.
Mm-hmm. And the texture of oil paint, where the artist is really using the texture of that. At this point, can Golden replicate that?
Well, like
texture?
I say, there are mediums that you can add to their paints.
Got it.
That you
To make it pretty thick.
to make it as thick and as to have very similar feeling consistency to it. Yes, exactly.
Pretty.
I think
pretty
the feeling that oils are king has is not true any longer, at least
true
not in
anymore.
contemporary painting, no.
Yeah, yeah.
Contemporary collectors and contemporary painting curators at museums are well into, you know, the use of materials that are
Mhm.
even, shall we say, you know, not the gold standard. Like, for example, the artist, I'm gonna not remember her name. Oh God, there's an artist who is very well known. She died young. She died at I think at the age of 40. But she was a very important artist in using materials. She used a lot of latex in her work, and it was groundbreaking, you know, work
At the
for a
time.
lot of contemporary artists. But I recently saw an exhibit of some of her work, and it is decaying. You know, yeah, because
Yeah.
some of those early, you know, uses of latex and polymers were not
Yep.
the best.
Yep. Yep. Interesting.
Yeah.
I'd love to see an acrylic paint that, like, using a Van Gogh style, where you really, it's almost sculpting, you know?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. A lot of artists do that. Yeah, that's
Ah.
not hard to find, Tally. Yeah, yeah.
Ah,
People, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, it's time to close up shop here. Sorry, we didn't get to making stuff, but I'm hoping that this was equally beneficial for you all, just watching it. And, you know, for your homework, maybe I'll send along, I can send along a color exercise for you to play with and see
Great.
how that feels.
Good. Good.
But I will see you next week for our last class.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I'm sure I will think about something that will be, you know, a good one to end on. But if you have any thoughts and also things that I haven't covered yet that you're really wanting to cover, please send them along.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
everybody, have a
Great.
great day.
Thanks a lot, Adria.
See you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Great.